I hate this laptop. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Angelica from the Council for Opportunity and Education. You are with us for the Connect, Discuss, Learn Pre-College Programs webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to you. It takes us about a week, maybe a week and a half to get it out to people because we do upload this to YouTube for your viewing. We'll also send out the slide deck and any other resources that we have from this webinar. Today we have President Maureen Hoyler with us to talk about updates, or maybe not updates, of where we are with the Department of Education, as well with our, as if you've been with us before, you know we always do an effective practice, and so we've asked Michael Maxwell to come on and talk about online tutoring, and so he will be our effective practice later on in this webinar. It's pretty jam-packed, so we're going to get started. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Maureen.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody who's joining us. I hope that your summer programs are going well, and maybe not as well as you had hoped, but at least that you're staying in contact with your students, and that they're that you're learning a lot of things from this, and that they're learning some things and getting support from you for this. So let's go to the slides. Well, we really have not gotten any real updates from the Department of Education for some time, so I want to go over what's outstanding. You'll recall that in May, the Council for Opportunity and Education set up a task force to make recommendations to the Department of Education regarding the parameters for which objectives for talent search and EOC grants for 2019-20 should be able to be renegotiated. And those parameters are in the slide. So allow a decrease in the number of clients served of up to 45%. This is for EOC and veterans upward bound, which means that EOC and veterans upward bound could renegotiate objectives to as low as 55% of the number they were funded to serve. So if they were funded to serve 1,000, they could renegotiate that objective to 550. And the task force based that on the fact that that up until the end of prior to the pandemic, that institutions and agencies should be able to have served at least 50% of the number they were funded to serve, and an additional 5% since that time. They also recommended that a decrease of up to 20 percentage points in those who will enroll in a post-secondary program. So if you had 70% of, I'm making these numbers up, so let's say 30% of the clients that you served would enter a program of that were college ready, would enter a program of post-secondary education, that you could reduce that down to as low as 10. We made that recommendation because nationally colleges and universities are anticipating a decline of enrollment of about 20%, and even higher declines for low-income first-generation students. Similarly, for EOC, only allow decreases of up to 20% in the percentage of individuals receiving GEDs or the equivalent, and allowing decreases of up to 15% in the amount negotiated for completing financial aid applications and admissions applications. For veterans upward bound, allow decreases up to 20 percentage points in the number negotiated on standardized tests and program retention, and allow decreases of up to 10 percentage points on the post-secondary completion objective in Veterans Upward Bound. So let's go to talent search. So talent search allowed a decrease of up to 40% in the number of students served, so that you could, again, if you had proposed to serve 1,000, that you could go to 60% of that, which would be 600. Allow a decrease of up to 7 percentage points for secondary school persistence and graduation. 10 percentage points for secondary school graduation with a rigorous course of study. And I can't read, to be honest, the post-secondary education enrollment, how much we recommended. Angelica, can you read that?
I just have to unmute myself. It's 20%.
Yeah.
Allow a decrease in percentage negotiated of up to 20% consistent with those recommendations of EOC and VUB.
Okay. And then post-secondary attainment, again, a 10% decline. Again, the Department of Education has not gotten back to us on that. However, we are pressing them to get back to us on that. Let's take questions on just the renegotiation of objectives at this time, so that so in case there's.
Someone said, can I show the upper bounds?
Okay, we did not make recommendations on upward bound at this time, but we will have to make recommendations on the upward bound objectives as well. But we haven't yet, only talent search, EOC, and veterans upward bound.
Angelica, we couldn't hear what you were saying. It's broken. It's like really staticky.
Not sure what to do.
Okay, that's better.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. What I was going to say was, I don't think I added upward bound in here, did I?
No,
it was just EOC, talent search, and VUB. Somebody asked for the upward bound slide.
But we haven't done upward bound yet. We've only made recommendations.
And then someone said, are these renegotiated numbers recommendations or officially approved?
These are only recommendations to the department for parameters. After that happens, when they respond to us, then you will have to renegotiate your objectives with your program specialist. Some of you may not need to have reductions to this extent, but some of you, it was a feeling of the community that reductions to this extent were appropriate.
Someone asked, any discussion of how it will affect the 90% needed for prior experience points?
Well, that's the whole point of doing this, because once you renegotiate your objectives, you'll be able to meet them, and then you'll be able to get the your prior experience point.
Are we negotiating them for 2019-2020 school year only, or for both 2019-2020 and 2020-2021?
Well, you'll recall that in terms of calculating prior experience, they only look at the middle 3 years of your grant. So they're not going to look at 2021 for prior experience. And so you don't need to renegotiate 2021.
Any idea?
Unless, no.
Sorry, it would be for VUB.
For VUB, we'd be looking at 2021 as well.
Any idea when a response is anticipated?
No.
Any other questions? You can put them into the Q&A or the chat box. Okay, Maureen, I think you've answered them all.
Okay, let's keep going then. So the next slide. Okay, you'll recall that Assistant Secretary King sent out this letter um, about utilizing debit cards, you purchasing technology, and purchasing protective equipment for your staff and students. We responded to, we were trying to think of a polite word to use, but I'm kind of running out of polite words. Maybe if you had caught me at 10 o'clock in the morning, I would have had a more polite word to talk about that letter. But what you can tell from that letter is that the Department of Education's guidance is muddled guidance. So we're going to talk after this about technology and protective equipment, protective supplies. But we hope you received this information from me that we were disappointed in the lateness of the decision of allowing debit cards for meals, but saying that you had to contact your program specialist and get approval for that. It's particularly troubling because it came so late in the day. The issue of debit cards would be true for either Upward Bound or Talent Search. So we haven't received many comments back from the field saying that they have not received permission when they asked for it. I think that's more due to the fact that people didn't ask for it because of the lateness of the guidance rather than the fact that nobody's had it disapproved. Jelly, do you have anything to add on the meals issue?
The one thing is that they have program specialists who aren't responding, which that's a huge issue.
Okay, well, if you have a program specialist who has not responded, just make sure you document that, and then you go back to the frequently asked questions that say you don't need prior approval for things and that you need to inform people after the fact. So go ahead and do it if you're not, but document the fact that you requested it and did not get prior approval, and make sure you have in that file on your decision to use debit cards that language about not needing prior approval, but needing
the FAQs that they sent out. Yep.
I think it's number 13 of the FAQ. Okay.
Did you want to add?
We're getting some comments in the, that people want more detail. They don't need more detail. You got the money in your budget to provide people meals. I guess more detail might mean that you're only giving so many people how much money for lunch and how much money for breakfast. And that should be in your request, that you're providing the debit card, that blah, blah, and you're providing it, are you providing it weekly? Are you providing it every 2 weeks? How you're doing?
Some people have had problems with their institution. They won't go forward without written authorization from the department.
Well, if you would email Angelica, we will take those cases individually to I will take those cases to the senior people in the department. So we'll need a copy of your request and the name of your program specialist.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to throw out another question to you that was actually in the Q&A. It says recommendation on how we work with our purchasing department for charges that took place prior to this approval. My area is not allowing us to use grant funds. So this is the same case about them contacting us?
That's right. So if you haven't gotten approval, in 48 hours, please send it to Angelica, make sure she can tell what your institution is, and it has the date of the request, and that she has the name of your program specialist.
And I think this one is that they said that, that they had denied it before this approval came out, and they won't believe the retroactive approval.
Okay, so the same thing is true. If somebody denied it at some point in time and now they need to then, but you should request it again, say in light of Secretary King's letter of blah, blah, we're asking you to review this request, this decision that you made on such and such a date. Don't wait, don't, this is a change in your context, so you need to ask them again. Don't wait and say, well, they didn't tell me that I could do it. You need to ask them again to do it.
Would you like to go to the next slide?
Let's go to the next slide. Okay, you're probably so sick of me going over this that you, I don't know, you're ready to throw eggs at the Zoom screen, but Section 200, 308C of the OMB general provisions tells you when an institution needs approval to do something. It lists 7 things in which you need approval, and specifically says that you don't need approval to do anything else, okay? If you change the scope of your program, if you change the director, that name of that person who's on your grant award notification, if the person who's named on your grant award notification is going on leave for more than 3 months, or if they're reducing their time more than 25% or more. The fourth thing that you need prior approval for, can you move to the next slide, is if you're going to purchase equipment. The fifth thing is if you're going to move money from participant support costs to other items in your budget. Now, participant support costs for Upward Bound is room, board, tuition, room, meals, tuition. Now, none of you are doing that. None of you are spending less in room, board, and tuition than you were, I'm sorry. What you're spending money on is budgeted, and you don't need to have permission to move money into participant support costs. In the end, when they tell you how much money, what the increase is going to be for next year, you're going to have to submit a budget, a revised budget for 1920 and 2021 that deals with your carryover and moves money out of participant support costs. But that's not something you can do yet because we don't have the guidance back from them for some very important questions that are going to affect what your budget is going to look like next year. The sixth and seventh things that you need approval for are subawarding, transferring, contracting out. If you said the University of Delaware doesn't want to do this anymore and we're going to subaward it to the Delaware Community College system, that would require approval, or if you're going to reduce the amount of cost sharing. You'll notice that it doesn't say anywhere in here that you need approval to create a line item, to move money from one line item to another line item, unless it involves participant support costs. And so for that reason, it is that Dr. King's letter was so confusing because it only talked about supplies, protective equipment, protective supplies, and to my dress, a protective. Are you surviving back there? Okay. Supplies and technology, which are also supplies. So it dealt with something you don't need approval for in the first place. So guiding, Zion, you got to speak more quietly. Um, so the rules governing a purchase of anything are that it has to be reasonable and it has to be allocable. So if you purchase either of those two items, and we'll go into them a little bit more, you don't need prior approval for them because they're items that the OMB circular doesn't require that you get prior approval. It still has to have, it's still. They're all laughing at you. A whole bunch of people are laughing at you. I'll tell them that. Okay, let's move on to the next slide.
Maureen, well, real quick, I was, and didn't the FAQs from the higher education programs, when that came out, it said that they only needed to inform during
Right,
COVID-19. It's not even permission now.
Right, but even so, you don't even have to inform people of, you know, would you, let's go to the next slide.
Sure.
Okay.
I meant only the things that you needed permission for.
Right, so you don't need permission to purchase supplies. You know, you've never needed permission to purchase supplies. You've never needed permission to create a line item for supplies if you didn't have a line item for supplies before. So it doesn't make sense that you would, it no more makes sense that you would ask for permission to buy masks than it makes that you would ask for permission to buy pens. So let's try to think about why the department came out with this guidance that seems contrary to the guidance that's operating all the time. Now, one thing that might be the case would be, let's say they had gotten a number of requests, not simply to buy protective supplies for Upward Bound students and Talent Search students participating in activities of the Upward Bound or Talent Search project, but to buy protective supplies for a larger group of students. So every student in the target high school, or every, okay, so that they wanted to make it clear that if you were trying to provide supplies for a larger group, that you would need prior approval for that. That's the only reason. Otherwise, as long as it's reasonable, it's something that the students need for the students and staff to be protected and to come to your sessions. It doesn't seem to be something that would in any way require approval, and that no auditor would look at a purchase of such supplies as outside the scope of the grant. Again, it would have to be supplies for clients or students that were served by the grant or staff of the grant, or individuals that you're bringing in to do workshops or something that is directly allocable, directly benefits the grant. It was unclear why that would be the case, that this would be the case. Again, the issue of reasonable means, though, if the institution is providing protective from its own to everybody on campus, if it's providing, you know, deep cleaning of your offices every 3 days or whatever, then you shouldn't be paying for the deep cleaning of your offices every 3 days. You should only be paying for what is not being provided across the board. I hope across the board is clear. So let's go to equipment. The same thing is true in supplies. Means all tangible personal property. So that means stuff you can touch that isn't equipment. And A computer is a supply if the acquisition cost is lesser than the capitalization established by the non-federal agency. So if your institution or agency has a definition of equipment that's less than $5,000, which is the federal definition, then you have to abide by your institution or agency. So again, back on the FAQs, they said you could buy, let's go to the next slide, technology. So there's no reason not to rely on that answer in number 7 in the FAQs. Yes, in many cases it is permissible. Funds may be reallocated from line items of the group budget to cover electronics if allowable under the program statute, but they must notify their specialists. But you don't have to do it prior. You can do it after the fact, because obviously you needed to do it way before they gave you any guidance on it. So, again, you'll have to say at the end, we purchased these computers for use by students, or we purchased these hotspots for use by students. But that's an after the fact thing, because hopefully you've already done it.
And when you say after the fact, meaning writing an email or showing a revised budget that they've asked for, correct?
Right, and I would not send it in a separate email. I would wait until you can submit your 2019-20, what you did, explain what you did, and also your 2020-21, what you're requesting to do in 2021. So I would not do this piecemeal with your program officers, because you want to have an easy document that your auditor can refer to and that your institution has on record that explains what you did, why you did it, and that you reported it to the Department of Education.
Do you want to stop here and take some questions?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay, I'm going back in the chat box, and it says, are the reductions in percentage points that you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar only in discussion at this point?
Yes.
And then I know you've answered this before, but if so, when do you expect there to be a decision on those?
We're pressuring the department to come up with a decision very shortly, because you all need the answer to that question. But I must say, our highest priority today is to get the student support services like published. So this is behind that in terms of pressuring the department.
A person writes, I keep getting conflicting advice as to whether moving services to virtual format constitutes a change in scope. Does it?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it just, if you were to answer a question about change in scope, think if 2 years ago you had said, I'm going to eliminate my summer program and I'm going to make it virtual, do you think you could have done that without prior approval? Do you think it would have been a change in scope? Now, it is a change in scope they cannot deny, okay? There's absolutely no way they can deny it, but when you send that revised budget, you say, I moved my program virtual. When you tell them what you did, you have to say, you would say that, because otherwise the changes that you made in your program don't make any sense. So again, it's kind of a question that it doesn't matter whether you got what your opinion is on it, whether it's a change in scope or not a change in scope. You're going to tell them that you did it. They're going to approve it. So, and they've already said to do it in the FAQs. They already said, take your program virtual. Okay, they just said after the fact, tell us that you did it. So sometimes we get caught in the minutia of the regulations, and we mix. They've already told you it's allowable, that they're going to allow it. They just want you to tell them that you did it.
Okay, I'm going to read two more, I think, and then we're going to turn it over to Michael Maxwell. We'll come back and finish the slide presentation and answer any unanswered questions. This one, the situation permission to buy supplies comes up with our grants office every few years. At one point, she made us write an email to our Department of Ed manager that listed out stuff we need to buy, like staples, sticky notes, etc. We had a situation with the PP&E for clients. Thank you, Angelica, for helping me get these items approved. So she's saying here that that her grants office makes her do this kind of stuff. It's not necessarily the Department of Ed.
If that's the situation that it's your grants office, COE offers a number of things that we can do to help you with your grants office, whether that's an individual consultation, whether that's having your grants office attend some people from your grants office or your supervisor attend the legs breaks training. I think talking with Angelica or Vanessa about the best way to deal with your particular individuals is probably the way to go. But we understand that in numerous cases, this is the institution or agency, and it is not the Department of Education that's putting the roadblock up.
Someone said, and this will be a good segue to transfer to our transition to our effective practice section of this. Will the slides presented be available to us? Yes, as I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, that the recording, the slide deck for both COE and for Michael Maxwell's will be added. You probably will receive it within a week and a half. We download our presentation off the cloud and onto YouTube. So just bear with us. It'll be, again, a week or a week and a half. All right. So at this time, we are again transitioning to our effective practice. We like to bring items coming from the field of people who are doing some really innovative ideas and things with their participants during COVID-19. So we've asked Michael Maxwell to come on and talk about his online tutoring. He did a portion of this, or he probably did more of this for our Talent Search Forum last week, and we thought, wow, this is really wonderful, that we would like for him to showcase a little bit about what he's doing to everyone on our Connect, Discuss, Learn. So Michael.
Thank you so much, Angelica. Good afternoon, Trio family. How we doing? Anybody having a magnificent Monday? If you are having a magnificent Monday, let me know in the chat by typing yes in all caps. Plus, that means you can hear the sound of my voice and see what's on my screen. If you are having a magnificent Monday, come on, give me a big yes in the chat. Oh, I see you, I see you, I see you. Jovinia, yes. Yvette, yes. Melissa, yes. Nikki, yes. Camille, yes. Jana, yes. April, yes. Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, if you're having a magnificent Monday, then what you got to do is that you got to get up and dance it out. So come on. By the way, if you're happy. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Come on, y'all. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Hey, that's right. Come on. We're going to get happy. We're going to get happy. Oh, yeah. Come on. We're going to get happy about online tutoring. I am excited to join you all today to just briefly, Angela's going to talk because everybody who knows me knows I can't do things briefly, but to briefly talk about what we did and how we transitioned to online tutoring. So listen, I just got a quick question. If you are currently not doing online tutoring, then type in the chat, not doing. If you are doing it, type in the chat, I'm doing. I just want to kind of get a feel as to if you're doing online tutoring, if you're not doing online tutoring. All right, not yet. We are doing, I'm doing, not doing online. We're doing it, okay. All right. Oh, good. It looks like we're kind of half and half on this. All right. Wow. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. So listen, if you're not doing it, then I'm going to give you some things to think about to sort of begin to craft how you want to do it. And if you are doing it, maybe I want to give you some things to think about in terms of retooling and recrafting it in order to make it a little bit more effective. So let's talk about it. So I think really the first question I wanted to really talk to you about is to really tell you why we started doing online tutoring. And I keep it going, keep the chat going, because I'm looking at it. All right. And so I started in Georgia State back in 2000 and my gosh, 12, I think it was. Maybe 13, 14, I don't know. But we have two upward bound programs and one math science program. And I direct one upward bound and one math science, and my colleague directs the other one. And we kind of operate things together or do things jointly because it gives us more things to do or more resources for our students. And so when we kind of got there, we were serving probably 19 different schools between the three programs, and figuring out tutoring was going to be a nightmare. Like, pull out your hair. What in the world are we going to do with tutoring? And so we kind of figured, well, what if we, instead of just doing it on Saturdays, what if we figured out a way to kind of have it available throughout the week online for kids? And so I was like gung-ho. Like, when I had that conversation with myself, I was like, yes, self, let's do it. And so I came in the office, I was like, yo, we're gonna do online tutoring, let's go. And my staff said, well, we think that's a really good idea, but Michael, can we really kind of talk through this before you kind of go? Because at that point they understood and knew that I was if I said it, we're going to do it the next day. And there are a couple of things that we had done that way. And then, so we kind of said, all right, listen, Michael, can you at least let us talk about a plan? And I said, okay. I said, well, let's talk about it. So we sat down and had a staff meeting. And I got to tell you, it was probably the most amazing thing that we could have done, was really sit down and talk through, because there were some things that I didn't really even think about that they brought up. And there were some things that came out that we really felt like we needed to address. Excuse me. So if you're not doing it, and even if you are doing it, right? So the question really becomes, how are you answering the 5 W's? Let me clear my throat, hold on. All right, perfect. So how are you really answering the 5 W's? So let's talk through what the 5 W's are and what that means. And so, quite frankly, the first thing is that who is going to have the primary responsibility of the tutoring component? And let me say this, directors, unless you've got nothing else to do with your life in terms of your directorship, and if you have no other administrative things you've got to do, I know most talent search directors have a caseload of students. Some upward bound folks have caseloads of students. SSS folks, caseloads of students. EOC, caseloads, everybody, right? And so I know, directors, if you've got other stuff to do, then this does not need to be you. And as a matter of fact, it was my staff who said, you know what, Mr. Maxwell, you don't need to own this, right? You can kind of put it together, but you don't need to own it. And that's true. So we kind of figured that somebody else, one of our program specialists, would become the tutorial coordinator, right? So that became her responsibility. And then when she took that on, then we kind of figured out, well, what does that entail? So she's responsible for staffing. She's responsible for training of the staff that does online tutoring. She is responsible for making sure that the communication goes out well. And she's responsible for ensuring documentation. All right. And so those were just the limited things that we came up with to say, okay, tutorial coordinator, these are the things that you're responsible for. But then we kind of figured out what other staffing things needed to happen. And the main thing was we needed an IT person. And so we looked around the room. Well, I looked around the room. They all looked at me and kind of said, yeah, that's you. And I kind of said, okay, I'll do it. So, what happens if there's a problem? Who is going to be the person that handles that? Now, granted that the entire staff is trained on the platform or on what we're going to do, but who is going to be the chief IT person that's going to walk a student through really some technical issues? And so that became me, and I would encourage you to figure that part out. Who is going to be that person? All right, so then after that, then we kind of said, okay, well, they say, well, okay, Mr. Maxwell, then what are we going to use on? What are we going to do? And so I said to them, well, y'all, we got a couple of options. And so we could either go the DIY HGTV option, where we could build it and do it, or we could do the plug and play option. I don't know about y'all, but if you can remember the Miss Pac-Man game, like I was a Miss Pac-Man arcade fanatic, right? So much so that as an adult, I went and bought the Miss Pac-Man plug and play thing. What does that mean? You plug it right into the computer, you hit the on switch, and you can play Miss Pac-Man just like you're playing at the arcade. All right, so if you are a Miss Pac-Man arcade fanatic, let me know in the chat. I'd love to know. So what was the option? And so because, nice, Linda, because we kind of wanted full control of it, we decided to go with the DIY. The DIY option for online tutoring. And so that was it. And so we kind of went there. So then in going with the DIY option, so we kind of then had to figure out some other things that I'll talk about in a second. All right, so then we decided, then after that, then the next W was, when are we gonna do it? And so what we did was we surveyed students and we surveyed our Saturday tutors in Upward Bound to say, listen, you all tell us, we want to venture into this space of online tutoring. One, do you even need it or want it? Two, tell us when and what days and what times this will work for you. And so we gave them a series of options to choose from. And it turns out that they liked Mondays and Wednesdays from 7 to 9. And that was a consensus. And then we came back to the staff and said, staff, does this work for you? Because this is going to be times that we're going to have to take part, because there's nothing like a program activity should take place where a staff member is not present. And so staff said, yep, we'll work. And then we kind of did some work schedule augmentations to make sure that no one was working and we weren't breaking the law in terms of excessive hours and making sure things were right with comp time, things of that nature. So that was also a deal that we had to work through with staff. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're having those kinds of conversations. Okay, so then the next question was, well, is there a place where both students and tutors can do online tutoring, right? And so what do we mean by that? So because we were just launching this, let's start with the tutor side first. The tutors and the staff, what we decided was that it made more sense that because people were working a work day, because they were at the office on Mondays and Wednesdays, that they would just stay at the office until 9 o'clock. And they said, yep, that makes sense, especially at the beginning of this, because we want to make sure everything goes well. And then we decided, you know what, we're going to also have the tutors. Now, this worked out for us because we had all GSU tutors to be able to be a part of the online tutoring process as staff. And so all the tutors came to our office, the staff was in the office, and we were one big happy family. rocking out online tutoring. And what that did was that allowed for the tutorial coordinator to have a great bird's eye view of the administrative side, while we told the students that they could stay at home and they could log on and things of that nature. And so then from there, it was very, very easy for us to troubleshoot any problems, things of that nature, because we wanted the students to have a very, very fluid and nice process and procedure when we came to online tutoring. And so, but then we wanted to make sure that the students had a great place. So we asked students, did you all have a place where you had good internet and that you could concentrate and get work done? And so you want to make sure that they've got that, because without that, that makes tutoring ineffective. So make sure that they've got a place where they can really do it. And then finally, do they have the adequate hardware and software? And I think this was a perfect last question, given that President Hoyle did an amazing job of talking through purchasing equipment to make sure that students can participate. All right, so got it. Thank you. So when I think of DIY, I think of IKEA. And so when we talk about IKEA, what do you need? All right, so let's shop at IKEA because that's where you go to do the DIY. So you need a shareable whiteboard space. That's really what you need for online tutoring. A shareable whiteboard space for the tutor to put stuff on for the students to put stuff on the board. The tutor can respond, things of that nature. All right, at its very, very bare minimum, you need shareable whiteboard space, okay? And so there are several shareable whiteboard space options that you can choose from. There's Ziteboard, explain everything. There's if you are if you're a Chrome user, there's Sketchboard, which is a Chrome add-on. If you are a Google Suites for Education campus or organization, then you have access to Jamboard, right? All of these are great options for shareable whiteboard space. However, it gets a little more complicated than that because you are doing educational things with this. You're not just doing brainstorming and things of that nature. So you want to make sure that you've got whiteboard space that has educational benefits to it, that have educational aspects to it. And so, nice, upward bound person. And I see the Pac-Man people. I saw y'all. That's cool. And so let me give you ones that you can use. So you've got Whiteboard.fi, you've got iDrew, you've got Scribbler, and you've got Tutors Box. And so what you want to make sure is that students are able to do the things that they want to do educationally to be able to have a fluid experience within the online tutor system. Because, let me ask you this question. And Charlotte, good to see you again. I see your question, Charlotte. I'll get to that. Because let me ask you a question in the chat. Tell me, what subject do students probably need the most help with when it comes to tutoring? What subject areas do you see? Oh, I see one in all caps. Yes. Oh, doom, I see a physics, but it looks like math and science are taking the lead and the most votes here, right? And that's the truth. So, and then let's talk about English as well, right? And so you want a experience where students can write math on the board and it looks like math, or you want to be able to do scientific things and it looks like science. And I'm not trying to guess what that is. And so all of these have the LaTeX feature, LaTeX, LaTeX, and which, Anika, good to see you, Anika, and Chantal, good to see you too. And so what you want to do is have LaTeX. LaTeX is the computer language that turns mathematical jargon into symbols that relate well on the screen. And then from there, you can take that and it goes to science. You also want kind of a Wolfram Alpha ability to be able to share things. And so all of these have that ability to be able to do those. And so Anika, I will answer that question momentarily. in terms of, she asked, are students signing up by topics? And the answer is yes, they are. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. Now, somebody did ask about knowing how many ETS programs have an identified IT person. Now, that's an interesting question, Charlotte. So, and she says she also wants to know about DIY virtual tutoring. If you have done a DIY virtual tutoring session, Charlotte wants to know if you've done that, if you've done a DIY yourself. So I don't know, Jelly, how we can do that. I don't know if you can post something and then.
So I think the best way to do that is to ask the listserv, to be honest. I mean, that's a great place to utilize, is if you put it on the listserv and see what you get back.
Okay. All right, so let's keep shopping in IKEA. So now we've got the shareable whiteboard space. Second thing is, how are you going to get the word out? How are students going to be able to know that online tutoring has started? Because I don't know about y'all, but students are busy doing other stuff. So I need to remind them about it. And where am I going to put the information for online tutoring? And so what we decided was that, one, we would continue to use Remind to text students that online tutoring was going to take place. But then that we would use another platform, whether we use our online school, which is Neo LMS, but you may use your website, you may use your Facebook page, you may utilize any other online cloud space to actually post the boards or where students can go to catch up with a tutor in a specific subject. All right, and so that's something that you need, because I would not text 10, 15 people's things, because that text message would look pretty crazy. So Shika asked a good question. How do you get your students to buy in and participate? So Ms. Sanders, let me tell you, as an Upward Bound program, because it is required for me, it is required for them. So their stipend is directly tied, or part of their stipend is directly tied to online tutoring, or it's a tutoring period. And give me 1 second and I'll tell you something about how online tutoring fits into that. Give me like 2 slides and I'll tell you. All right, so having a good communication method works for that. And it's also tied to any sort of cultural activity that we do that you have had to have satisfied online tutoring. So it's a double-edged sword for them. It's the stipend side and it's cultural activities that are tied to doing online tutoring. Okay, and so then the third thing was getting the actual people. And so for you guys, let me tell you, you can get some college students. That'd be great. If you're at a college, it could be a job that you offer. We do it at $10 an hour for both our week and weekend tutoring sessions that we do. So they get a decent pocket change that we're able to offer them. We've also done some school instructors at our target schools. And so if you've got some good instructors that would want to get in on this, that'd be great. But the key thing is also, you got to plan out the training part of it. Okay, and so my tutorial coordinator goes over all of the nuts and bolts of the policies and procedures, and then I do the technical part of it. So I train the platform, she trains the policies and procedures, and we talked real in depth about how we were going to do that to make sure that it worked. And then from that, we developed the policies and procedures as it related to online tutoring. And this is key because it will completely make sure that the entire experience is continuous and that it's a pleasurable one for everyone involved. So let's talk about what that means. So I'm gonna Okay, so the first thing was, what constitutes a tutoring session? Is it the length of time? Is it content covered, right? And so for us, it was content. That if a student came in, whether they spent 5 minutes and they discussed a meaningful back and forth with the tutor about a problem or anything of the sort, then that was the equivalent to somebody that spent a whole hour trying to get content covered. So content was what mattered for us, right? And so then what happens when a student logs in? How does that work? And so we went through a whole training several times with students to say, when you log in, this is what you're going to see, and this is how you're going to operate. That the chat feature in our room is purely designed to let the tutor know that you're in the room and to let the tutor know exactly what you need help with. And the tutor will assign you to a board, and then on that board is how everything, or where your conversation and everything that you do will take place. What is the expected conduct? Okay, and so what are things that you should say? Tutors, how should you respond to students? Right? And students, make sure that your interaction with the tutors are appropriate. All of that. What happens if a student has connectivity issues? Do we have a backup plan? And that answer was yes. That if a student had connectivity issues or really needed tutoring, now a tutorial coordinator would sort of facilitate a phone session with the student and a tutor, depending upon the subject area. How are we going to document tutoring? And so my tutorial coordinator makes sure, so how are we going to do that? We're going to do an online form that the tutors fill out at the conclusion of every session that tells us what students came into your room, how much time they spent, and what subject area did they cover. And we're going to also use that to govern your timesheets. And then what is the staff responsibility in that? And again, I'm gonna say it again, that there should be no activity that happens that a staff member is not present, especially in this online world. And so staff members have responsibilities to oversee every room that we have available. So we split that up amongst the 7 of us, that we have 1 to 2 rooms that we operate in. And in addition, that in the instance that a tutor is absent, can a staff member step in to help fill that gap? And so I do it for math and for our test prep sessions all the time. And so that was part of our building policies and procedures. So that was that. So somebody asked if we did things kind of signed up by subject. And so let me tell you how this works. So what you see on the left is our communication via text. All right, and so we tell the students online classes have been posted. They know that posted means in our online school. We tell them to remember about the conversations. We tell them information about test prep and what we did, because again, test prep is a sort of requirement for Upward Bound. And I think access to it, something for talent search, that we decided that we were gonna have a test prep option in online tutoring. And so then we told students also in the text, and I'll talk about that in a second, we told students in the text that if you need assistance, who you should contact and who was not available. So this is the text message that goes out every Monday, every Wednesday. Now, here is what is posted, okay? And so if you've got no homework, then you can log in, and to satisfy the requirement, you can do a test prep math session and a test prep English session. It'll take you all of 15, 20 minutes to do. And then you will have satisfied that. And that also gives people great baseline in terms of foundational information that students know if you did a test prep situation. So then from there is a math and science section, there's a English section, there's a foreign language section. So all of the core classes is what we cover within online tutoring. However, what we did tell students, so let me back up. So all of the core classes are covered. So we went out and found tutors who could cover all of the core subjects, math through calculus, all of the sciences, English, Spanish, and French, which was the popular languages that our students were taking. And then we did stats, and we did like history, because those were things that kept coming up as areas of subject need. And then we told students the following, that if there was a subject we didn't offer on a consistent basis, but you needed help, just give us 24 hours in advance to say, hey, I'm going to need some help in this. And that we would either find someone or one of our staff members would help you kind of get through that process, and do a session with you. So even though we do Mondays and Wednesdays, there are times we've done Tuesdays, times we've done Thursdays, times we've done Fridays. And so that is how we do that. And so that's the DIY situation. And if you want a plug and play situation, and plug and play means that you find somebody who has the tutors, who has the shareable whiteboard, and you just want to buy some hours, then tutor.com, tutorclass.com, iTutor, TutorI, and Schooly are great options that you just go, buy a subscription, and you kind of administrate it. And what's great is that it gives you great analytics in terms of how students, this is tutor.com's, how they are doing it, how they're logging in, all of that. And then finally, the last piece is this, is that at the conclusion of every semester, and really at the end of every academic year, if you can do it every semester, that'd be great, but evaluate the tutoring process. Let your students evaluate the platform, the tutors. Do they like it? Do they need anything to improve upon? And then you know how to move forward. And so that is how we got to where we are. And Jelly, I think I did that in the allotted time. So I don't see any other questions, y'all. So I want to say thank you for listening to me. Thank you for hanging out. And I really hope you continue to have a marvelous Monday afternoon / evening, and stay cool in the summer.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. As always, you're so energetic, and you teach a topic well. So we do appreciate, especially at a 4:15 Eastern time webinar. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We're going to now go back to our, I got to make sure I pull up the right one. Our presentation that we were working on before. And we will continue with our slides. Do you want to answer some questions, Marina, or do you want to go on and then we can pick everything up at the end?
Why don't we go through it and then we'll go to the questions. And I think, we have another 15 minutes that okay. Just want to remind everybody that we have recommended to the department that Talent Search and EOCs are able to provide stipends again for this year and next year of $100 a month. We have not gotten a response to this. We've also recommended to the department that the stipend amount be raised during the summer to $400 a month. And Veterans Upward Bound would be $100 a month during the summer. And during the academic year, rather than $30 a month, it would be $100 a month as well for Upward Bound and Upward Bound Math Science. Again, we haven't heard back on any of these.
Oh. All right. Well, we're actually at the end. So, questions. Someone, and I'm not sure if it's for Michael or for us, but let me just read it out loud. We have been holding Zoom meetings with our Talent Search students since the pandemic began, and we plan to continue using online as well as in-person meetings if the schools will allow it. I just want to confirm we need to let our program specialists know, correct?
No. What you're going to need to let your program specialists know is that you continue to serve students, that you're going to try to renegotiate your objectives, that you modified your budget. You have a package to let your program specialists know. that's one item in the package, but it is a part of a package. It's not something that you want to do on an individual basis. Now, you might be best friends with your program specialist and talking every day about how you're sick of Zoom meetings, or, you know, there are instances when the recommendations I'm making to you are not appropriate to your relationship. If you've got a relationship where you talk frequently with your program specialist and saying, hey, these are what we're experiencing, that's perfectly appropriate. I'm just saying that in terms of trying to get your regulatory package together so that when you're done with the year, you've got all your permissions, you've got all your notifications to the department. You want those in one place. You don't want them in a series of different emails.
I'm looking. If you wrote a question before we started the effective practice section, if you can either please put it into the Q&A box for me, that would be wonderful. So would it be best to submit those things, move to virtual, when we get our GANs for the upcoming year, to have to send in budgets at that point?
Yes.
That makes sense. Sorry. This has,
and again, think about this, and this is what we're trying to say to the Department of Education. They haven't told you whether you can give a stipend to a student in talent search. If they do, that probably means your budget for next year is going to look different than it would have if they said no. So they've got to answer some questions before you can honestly and thoughtfully say what you're going to do going forward. And that doesn't even say anything about, you don't know if your schools are going to let you in. I presume most of them aren't. You don't know if your college is going to let you have kids on campus. All those questions that many of you don't have the answers to yet. Do you think, Jelly, that I could do this to dance music?
I know, we should, huh? It would be great.
Maybe next time we'll try, you know?
That'd be great. Vanessa will
Michael,
love that.
We're gonna need your help on this.
The happy song when it's pretty depressing. Mm-hmm.
I'll start cueing the music.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Someone said I was under the impression that talents would not be able to give out stipends.
Well, again, they haven't said no. We've asked them we've asked the department for this. The CARES Act gives the department the authority to allow it. So again, but they have to implement the authority that they have.
Was this presentation recorded and will it be shared? So yes, it will be. It is recorded and it will be shared in about a week to a week and a half. It will be uploaded from the system we're using to YouTube, and it'll be sent out with the slide decks and any other materials that we had with this presentation. I don't think we have any other questions. Well, maybe, hold on. Is there a template to follow on what to give our program specialist?
There will be when it's, we will develop that, yes, but it's not available now because it does depend on some of these answers to these questions.
I propose to use carryover staffing lines, work study, internship, and stipend monies to increase summer stipend to $100 per week for 6 weeks.
Okay, they could not approve that yet.
Correct. I mean, it would still be $60.
Right, $60
a month, right?
Right.
So they probably said no or no response because they couldn't, unless you were doing work study, because work study, they could have done $300 a month and then they could have only given out 100. So that's fine. Let's see.
Hey, Jelly, I typed something to you in the chat. Can you see that?
Yeah, do you want to say it out loud?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
So President Hoyler, I wanted to share with you an interesting comment that was made to me in the beginning of this whole thing. We started our summer program June 1. I made the request before when the initial FAQ came out about giving cash for meals for my students, and the initial response was no. And I wrote back and said I was confused because this would be no different than if I took my kids on a trip and gave them cash to get meals. And I received a response that said that it is illegal for us to give cash to students outside of a stipend, that even on a trip, that if I gave kids money, that is illegal. And that was partially why they came back with the no cash thing. And so do you have any comment to that?
Well, first of all, they don't define what's legal and illegal. Okay, the federal government doesn't define what's legal in Georgia in terms of I mean, they couldn't define what's murder in Georgia, let alone what giving $15 to a kid is. So that's not anywhere within their scope of authority to say what's legal or not legal. Similarly, it's not their job to say whether giving cash to a student is consistent with the guidelines that the institution. It's the consistent treatment. How does Georgia State handle situations where they give cash to students? And as long as you're doing something that's consistent with what your institution permits, it is certainly allowable. So it's one of those cases, Michael, where you just get a totally off the wall response, and that I would always advise somebody who gets a response like that to say, well, please tell me where in the regulations it says this. And if they can find someplace that it says it, but they usually can't, not usually, you get my point. You never accept an opinion from somebody, whether it's me or you or another peer or even a program specialist, unless they can give you the regulatory site and the reason that that's the way they interpret the regulation. Michael, is that sufficient?
And that was my response, but I thought it was so off the wall that I just wanted to hear what your response was.
I'm trying to find my next question. There's a couple of things that are comments. I am talent search unless we can. No, this is not the right one. I am worried about if we have to do virtual because our kids don't want to do it. Some of our schools are going back to in-person on time. I am not sure if we can go there yet. I do not know about all schools here yet. It's not as bad as other places in the country.
I think even if you're in a place that is remember your program year goes from September and through August. So don't think that you have to plan out your program year for today. Maybe you need to have a good plan in place as soon as the schools decide what they're doing in September or what you're going to do in September. But don't feel like you have to plan everything. But when you take, I think a couple of things Michael said were really important. You have to have the incentive to participate. And so we need to think through and help you think through what those incentives can be other than an upper bound. There's the stipends. What can they be in talent search? That's why the the recommendation for the stipend in ELC and talent search and the larger stipend in upward bound is so important. And you understand why your students are not big on Zoom meetings. You're not big on Zoom meetings. So, so we do have to really work on, and hopefully we can work together as a community on those incentive questions.
Maureen, so I think that's it. If there are other questions that we did not answer on the webinar, you can send them back to either Maureen or myself. You can see our information that is on the question page right here. We thank you for your time this afternoon. You have a good evening or afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Vanessa. Have a good. If I could actually stop my share and all that good stuff. Okay.